Hi, folks. Hi, everybody. Sorry I'm slightly late, but everything's fine. Um, Thanks for being here, everybody. As usual, I will be answering questions, starting first with the pre-submitted questions that I received from my wonderful Patreon patrons and channel members. So if you are watching live in the chat and you have a question for me or something you want me to see, or especially if you were going to be generous with a super chat or something of that nature, please, if at all possible, hold those things, hold them close, to your heart. Until I get through the patron and member questions, and then I promise I will turn my full attention to the live chat. So let's get started right away then with the patron and member questions. Dana, you don't suck. You don't suck. You are awesome and amazing. And if you shit talk yourself like that, I'm going to beat your fucking ass. No, I would never do that because I don't think I'm capable of it. I think you could take me without really breaking a sweat. But no, you're awesome. Stop it. You're awesome. You don't suck. Anyway, just had to lay down the law there for Dana. I apologize, everybody. But anyway, let me let me go to the first patron question. It's from Lawrence of America. First time caller, long time listener. Steve, if the powers that be allowed you to have an 8th day of the week, how would you spend it? Wrestling? Star Trek Lower Decks? Something else? It's not going to be Lower Decks. If I had an 8th day of the week and it was like an extra day and I had no pre-existing responsibilities or whatever, I would love to have a day every week where I can just relax. Because like the weekend, generally speaking, is more relaxing for me than during the week, but I'm still working on the weekend. Like Saturday is when I shoot videos, and Sunday is usually when I edit videos. And when I'm not editing, I'm, that's usually when Jason and Dana and I record podcasts. So like I'm working on something every single day of the week, even during the weekend when I try to, I sleep in the morning and I take things a little slower and it's not as crammed full of activity. But yeah, I wouldn't do anything. Maybe I'd watch wrestling. Maybe I'd, watch a movie or two, catch up on some more movies that I've been wanting to watch and haven't had time to watch, or catch up on like a series that's streaming somewhere that I wanted to see, that I haven't, had a chance to watch very much. But yeah, I wouldn't plan anything. I feel like that would kind of be the point of having an extra day, to just not plan anything. Just let whatever happens happen, take the day as it comes. That's what I would do. That's what I would do. Seize the day. Seize the 8th day. Carpe diem octem, whatever the fuck it would be. I took Latin in high school. I remember none of it. Black Cover 95. What if Stuffy was being introspective? How might a conversation between Stuffy and his reflection go? It's so weird that you ask me this question now, Black Cover 95, because actually earlier today, I came in here into this room and Stuffy was in here. And he was just sitting on a stool staring at himself in the mirror. And I recorded him with my phone. And we talked about it later. And he did give me permission to share it with you all. So actually, since this just came up in your question, I'll go ahead and do that now. What is in my wallet? So there you go. I asked him what he meant and he couldn't say, or maybe he wouldn't say. I don't know. But anyway, and by the way, that doesn't count as tonight's Stuffy short. There's still another Stuffy short coming. Andrew Michael, propaganda shows like Brooklyn Nine-Nine and The Rookie show idealized police officers who are emotionally supportive, lack prejudice, call out genuine injustice, and try to make the very concept of policing better for everyone. Is it possible shows like that improve the real police? Folks join after seeing them and think, I want to do that. I want to do good and help people truly in need. Maybe. I would hope so. I don't know. I mean, if they do have a positive effect, I wouldn't expect that it's super significant. I mean, policing still needs to be drastically reformed, even if shows like that do attract people of better character to policing, and more enlightened, sensitive, self-aware people who are, interested in pushing back against the harmful aspects of policing, that's still only going to be a handful of individuals. Like, the system itself still needs to be changed. So, it's not the responsibility of individual cops to just, act better and fix everything. Like, that helps, and that's definitely appreciated, especially in the absence of actual systemic reform. It's a good thing, but it's not sufficient. We still need to do the systemic reform. So, I mean, I suppose cop shows that not only present a positive portrait of cops, but do so in the context of acknowledging the problems. Like, I think that's good, and hopefully it helps a little, but I don't think it helps enough. Ed Best, how do you think it would affect the general election if Nikki Haley decides to run as a third party candidate? I don't think it'll really affect it all that much. I mean, she might pull some votes from Trump, which I would be grateful for. I would love it if she would run as a third party candidate, on the right, and pull votes away from Trump. So, I mean, I think if anything, she would help Biden, which would be great. But I don't know if she would have that big of an effect, because I think most of the people at this point who have decided that they're going to vote for Trump are team Trump to the point that nothing's going to change their mind. Because what else could change their mind at this point? If you're still going to vote for Donald Trump at this point, what could possibly throw you off of that train? Like, what could possibly change your mind? I can't think of anything. So if anything, Haley, she might pull a few votes away from Trump, or she might get some Republicans who weren't planning to vote at all to vote for her in the general. But I wouldn't imagine she'd be a spoiler against Biden. I mean, I think if she made any kind of a difference at all, she would help Biden. But I don't think, I don't think it would be that big of a difference, given how the Republican Party seems to be constituted at the moment. Pixel Boy. Hi, Steve. After hearing your answer to my last question, I rewatched The Offspring and Brothers, and at one point Sung said that he worked long and hard on the emotion chip. So now I see what you meant when you said my theory wasn't supported by the text. I actually believed my theory for years for a few different reasons. One, Lal unexpectedly gained the ability to use language contractions. Two, it always seemed clear to me that Lal's meeting with Admiral Halftel sparked fear and confusion in her, which led to the Cascade failure. Three, Data and Lore were both equipped with a port in their necks that seemed to be specifically designed to receive the emotion chip. Four, it didn't make sense to me that Lore would steal the chip if he already had emotions, so I assumed that his emotions were emulated and Lore wanted to feel real emotions. Oh well, I stand corrected. Today's question: why do you think Wesley failed his first entry into Starfleet Academy in the episode Coming of Age? I don't remember that episode well enough it's been a while since I watched that one. I don't know why in story he failed it. I mean, I can give you a few possibilities as to why the writers decided to go that direction with Wesley. I think that was season 1, and maybe they didn't want to have Wesley actually become a cadet that early, I guess they figured even for like a kid who's supposed to be a prodigy, that's still a little young. I think Wesley was only supposed to be 14 or 15 at that point. So it was still a little young for him to actually enter the academy. And also maybe they felt like it wasn't such a bad idea to have Wesley fail at something, to show that there are, some flaws in the armor, that he isn't the perfect little genius, that he does have his limitations, and he is capable of running up against adversity that he can't just think his way out of or overcome. Those are some possibilities that come to mind. But as far as specifically like anything that I could comment about that episode, I would have to watch that episode again. I haven't watched that episode in a very long time. So I don't know. David Colby going on a long trip for a dumb joke. You know what? Don't ever apologize for that. Um, I recently replayed BioShock. It's a video game where you are the sole survivor of a plane crash who finds themselves floating in the middle of the Atlantic next to a mysterious lighthouse emerging from the waves. Exploring within, you find a bathysphere that whisks you to Rapture, an underwater city built by an eccentric millionaire in the 1930s named Andrew Ryan, voiced by none other than Armin Shimmerman. Andrew Ryan is an objectivist and built his city to be an objectivist paradise. A land without restrictions, where greed was good and money rules all. By the time you arrive, the city has become a waterlogged tomb full of madmen and monsters, ruled over by a despotic Ryan who has broken his every single creed and philosophical ideal to cling desperately to power. After hours of crawling through this cold, dark hell, you finally find Ryan and beat him slowly to death with his own golf club and escape from the city of Rapture. Or, in short, it's the best Quark episode in Deep Space Nine. Yeah, it sounds like where if they they did the Star Trek Picard version of Deep Space Nine, and you pick up Quark wherever he's at 25 years later, and it would be something like this. He would have gone completely off the deep end and created like his own capitalist, ultra capitalist paradise. And it would have gone completely tits up, and now Quark would be in that kind of a situation. That could be a lot of fun. That could be a lot of fun. Brian McKinley. Hi, Steve. I have a controversial opinion. Remakes are not inherently a bad thing. We groan when we hear the word, but several classics, The Maltese Falcon, The Thing, are remakes. So what's a movie or show that you think could stand a good remake? P.S. Can you spare $454 million? Asking for a friend. What's a show that I think could stand a good... I agree with you. Remakes are not inherently a bad thing. And you mentioned The Maltese Falcon and The Thing. Let's also consider Werner Herzog's Nosferatu. Brilliant film. That is a remake of a brilliant film, F.W. Murnau's Nosferatu. Both Nosferatus are masterpieces, are absolute works of genius, and are very different from each other, even though they, cover the same basic material. What's a movie that I think could stand a good remake? Oh, man. Superman and the Mole Men. I mean, I love Superman and the Mole Men so much. Like, I really, really love that movie just as it is. But it would be interesting to see what a modern filmmaker could do with that same basic story. And it would be nice to see a big budget mainstream Superman movie that has the same political and social message that Superman and the Mole Men has, that could reach a wider audience. And also, hopefully bring attention to the original as well, right? So yeah, Superman and the Mole Men. Fuck it. Brian Baker. Steve, what the fuck is wrong with our society? We are without a national healthcare system in the U.S. Conservatives want all life protected from conception to birth and then ignore the needs of the child and their parents. And 90% of the world's wealth is owned by less than 10% of the people. When are we going to open our hearts and recognize the pain that our policies are causing? Why can't we spread the wealth and fucking alleviate the pain? It's so frustrating to see a solution and not be able to execute it because of cruel and selfish people. I mean, if I had the answer to that, I wouldn't be making YouTube videos for a living. You know what I mean? If I knew what to do and how to do it, I would be trying to do it, but I don't know. I agree with you. The superficially, stated in the most basic terms, the solution is simple and obvious. You have all these people with all this money, all this wealth that could be used by people on the opposite end of the scale to alleviate, certainly not all of their problems, but a great many of their problems, and to sort of rebalance society, at least economically speaking, and make it more equitable. And when you rebalance it economically, you also rebalance it in terms of the judicial system and the legal system, because how many barriers are there to poor people in the justice system? How many times have we heard the saying that if the punishment for a crime is a fine, then it's only illegal to the poor, because a rich person can pay a fine. Like if all you're going to do is charge them money for it, well, a rich person can just pay it. No skin off my ass. I can afford that. So, if you balance things, and I mean, obviously I would still want to reform the legal system and the justice system directly, but even absent of that, if you give more people more money so that everything is more affordable to them, that increases the level of equality and justice across the board. Doesn't fix everything, but it makes things better. So, and yes, it is frustrating to see that solution just sitting there and not being pursued, because there is insufficient political will to do it at the moment, because a large enough portion of the population has been lied to and scapegoated and, propagandized and fed a story that reinforces their prejudices and reinforces their fears and bigotries and, like basically everything conservatives do. It's frustrating. I don't know what the answer is, but I share your frustration, my friend, for sure. Some random geek who says every month is Black History Month. If you get rid of all the guns and do police reform, how can one protect oneself? Protect themselves from what? From crime? There is part of me that really hates the premise of the question. And I know you did 2 videos on guns in the USA, so I am not sure if you covered this topic already. Apologies if you have. It kind of assumes that only a gun can give one adequate protection, and stuff like pepper spray and martial arts self-defense classes aren't available, but also assume that there are criminals and they will hurt the innocent. But yet, if we just fix the social issues of poverty and homelessness, that solves most of the crime problem, which we must get rid of capitalism to do so, and that we have to get rid of the current system to get rid of capitalism too. Sorry, liberals, but the current system creates poverty and homelessness. Remember, give money to Phoenix, Joanna, and Joey. So, Steve, what about protection from criminals? Well, no, I agree with you that most crime is economically motivated, and that's not an excuse, and that doesn't mean that criminals, who commit crimes for economic reasons should be allowed to do it. It still should be illegal. There still should be some mechanism to discourage it and to punish it, in some way, hopefully some humane, just way, when it is done. But yeah, most people who commit crimes, especially property crimes like theft and so forth, aren't doing it because they're just evil people. They're doing it because they have determined that is the best option or the easiest option or some form of attractive option to improve their situation in life. And yeah, if we fixed society so that those underlying issues were not as serious and did not affect as many people, there would not be as much crime. Poverty does feed crime, and that doesn't, and I don't say that to stereotype poor people, because most poor people, just like most poor people in general, are not criminals and should not be viewed with added suspicion because they are from a lower economic class. But most crime is economically motivated. It's desperate people acting desperately because they've been pushed to that point. And yeah, if we fix the underlying problems, we will fix a lot of the results of those underlying problems, including crime. And yes, I would much rather be doing that as well as pursuing aggressive gun control. Like, I think there's a whole bunch of problems that we need to fix, and we could be working on all of those problems at once, or at least a bunch of those problems at once. We could be working on police reform and criminal justice reform while we are also working on the gun problem, while we are also working on addressing poverty. Like, we can do all of those, and they're all interconnected, and they all, amplify and exacerbate each other. And we could be addressing all of these problems at the same time. And we're not really doing much to seriously address any of them, which kind of goes to what Brian was saying in the previous question. So yeah, it sucks. But for the most part, I agree with you there. Agent Meister, First Lord of the Admiralty. Peldorjoy, Steve, the host of a radio program I listen to on my side of the Atlantic, got talking about ice hockey recently. In his opinion, hockey is the best of the sports that come out of North America. He stated that football goes on forever, baseball is boring, and basketball is only good if you're watching the highlights. I myself am not interested in sports, and anything I know of these disciplines is what I have observed through cultural osmosis. But I enjoyed the Mighty Ducks, so I can see where he's coming from. RE Hockey. What's your take on his take? Also, during the lightning round of your recent best worst couples video of Trek Actually, I noticed that the picture of Commander Riker over your right shoulder shifted position when you mentioned his encounter with Dr. Crusher. It was very much a blink and you'd miss it thing. Did you think you'd get away with it, Shives? Did you? Well, no, obviously I was really hoping people would notice it because I thought it was a very funny gag. And a lot of people did notice it, so it worked. I was right, as usual. I mean, I am not a regular hockey viewer, but I watch hockey usually during the Winter Olympics. That's like the main time when I'm interested in hockey. I watch Olympic hockey and I find it very exciting then. But during during a non-Olympic year, like I don't even remember the last time I watched an NHL game or made an attempt to follow the NHL. It just doesn't interest me. When I watch it, it's exciting. At least when I watch it during the Olympics, it's exciting, but not in a way that makes me compelled to watch it over and over and over again. I detest football and everything about it, so I am right there with you. At least yeah, we're thinking about American. I'm not a big fan of football, the European thing either. I'm what we call soccer. I'm not a big fan of that either because I do think that's kind of boring. But American football, gridiron football, I think is one of the worst things we've ever come up with. It's absolutely revolting to me in every way. It does go on forever and it's boring and it's violent and it's dehumanizing and I hate it. I hate everything about it. I love baseball. Baseball is my favorite sport. I think baseball is gorgeous and wonderful and beautiful and poetic. And I could go on and on and on and on and on about why I love baseball, but I do understand why other people don't like it and think it's kind of dull. So I'm not looking to evangelize or argue with anybody about it. And I used to watch basketball a lot. I could probably watch basketball again today and get into it and be entertained by it. I never had a problem with basketball. I watched it when I was in high school in the 90s, like everybody else, when, the Bulls and Michael Jordan were in the midst of their dynastic run in the mid 90s. I thought it was great and very exciting. But I haven't watched it for years and years. So no, I mean, I get, other than American football, I understand why people like all of those other sports. And I share a like for a couple of them, especially baseball, but also to a point basketball. And even to a lesser point, hockey, like I said, but I also understand why people might not like them. I generally don't watch sports all that much. I'll catch a baseball game every now and then during the baseball season, but it's not something that I watch or listen to on the radio all the time, just every once in a while. The only sport that I spend any serious time following is not even actually a sport, which is professional wrestling, which is a form of theater in the form of a sport, but is not actually a legitimate sport. But that's the closest I get to following sports regularly. General Contact Unit Problem Child. The Somerton thing got me thinking about the idea of trying to achieve public forgiveness. A thing occurred to me, and I want to know if you agree with it. In some communities, it's actually easier to achieve forgiveness if you do something really terrible and illegal, like, say, accidentally kill someone, because you'll get sent to jail, and so people will have a sense that you've been punished enough. Some content creators still get shit years later for bad stuff they did years ago. What they did wasn't stuff you'd actually go to jail for, so you don't get the catharsis that comes from some authority figure has actually punishing them, so people feel the need to do it themselves. P.S. To be clear, Somerton just got me thinking about this, but it doesn't apply to him. I think his apologies were just insincere manipulation, and he deserves further criticism. I mean, he claimed his fucking dead mother wanted him to be a filmmaker. Meme. And then here's the meme that is referenced. It's a child at his mother's deathbed, I presume, throwing himself on his mother, and he's saying, "Mother, how can I honor your memory?" And the mother says, "My son, cough, cough, it's my dying wish that you can that you con and rip off thousands of people to fund your film career. And then in this very poorly placed word balloon where the arrow actually obscures the face of the mother, this should more properly be placed lower in the frame, in this open area down here at the in the bottom right hand corner, for instance. But it says, "I will, mother, I will." Yeah, and I mean, other than the poor balloon placement, it's a really funny meme. Yeah, I mean, I think you have a good point. When someone does something really bad, and they are punished for it in a way where the punishment is clear and undeniable. They're sent to prison, for example, and they do their time and they get out. Like, I do think maybe it is easier for people to move on from that because, like you say, there's always the justification of, well, they did their time. Yes, what they did was terrible, but they've been punished. Justice has been done, right? And now they can have a second chance and move on with their life, and we can just forget about it. Whereas if you do something that doesn't rise to the level of being punished like that, there's always the question of, well, are you really sorry? Have you really made amends? And with James Somerton, I think he's going to be in that situation for a long time, probably forever. Because for one thing, like you point out, he doesn't really seem to be all that sorry. He doesn't seem interested in actually taking responsibility for what he did. I didn't watch his apology video. I have no intention of watching his apology video. I didn't care about him before I knew he was a plagiarist. I don't care about him now that I know he is a plagiarist. But it doesn't, from the clips of it that I've seen and from the commentary I've seen other people give, it seems like he's still making excuses and trying to justify and trying to explain and trying to say, yes, I know it looks bad, but, or I just made a mistake. I intended to take the plagiarized stuff out and paraphrase it. It was just placeholders in my script. And then I forgot and I went ahead and said it and blah, blah, blah. It's just making more excuses. He's not taking responsibility for what he obviously fucking did, which is steal other people's words and try to pass them off as his own words. That's what he did. That's why people are pissed at him. And he, as far as I've seen, he has not actually taken responsibility for that. So, and even if he did come out and say, you know what, you caught me, you're right, everything that H-Bomber guy said I did, I've been caught red-handed, I'm sorry, I deeply apologize, please forgive me. Even if he did that and seemed sincere, there are still a lot of people who quite reasonably would say, okay, nice apology, you still don't get to do this anymore. Like, it's nice you apologized, hey, you know what, we forgive you. We still don't want you to make YouTube videos anymore. Like, you don't get to do this anymore. You have blown whatever trust you may have had with the audience. You have wasted your opportunity, right? We're not going to say you deserve to have a miserable life for the rest of your life, but we are going to say you should probably find something else to do with it. Something less public. Something that doesn't depend on drawing an audience, because even with your apology, your credibility is shot, right? It might be that kind of a situation, but he hasn't even done that. He hasn't even sincerely apologized and taken responsibility and shown any interest in making amends and being held accountable. He hasn't done any of that. He's just continued to make excuses and play for sympathy. So fuck him. I would probably say fuck him anyway, even if he did apologize. But especially since he is responding to it the way he seems to be responding to it, fuck him. But yes, as to your main point, I agree with you. Michael Blank, I was considering the Borg and how they could have been going for so long and still be at a level where individual ships can be defeated. My thought was that it is intrinsically useful to the Borg to not be too advanced. If portrayed as not having creative capabilities, then being just beyond other groups' capabilities mean that they need to be innovative to beat the Borg, creating new knowledge to assimilate. What are your thoughts on that technological sweet spot? That is an interesting idea, that they want to be just advanced enough so that the people they come up against will up their, technology game and their R&D to come up with new technologies to defeat the Borg that the Borg can then assimilate and incorporate into their own technology. That's actually a really clever idea. I think that maybe it's a cool idea. A less creative reason, a less interesting reason than the one you came up with, but also a possible reason could be that the Borg don't care if individual ships are defeated every now and then because they know they have however many hundreds of billions of ships in reserve. And, they can pretty much win any battle they want to win just through sheer overwhelming brute force if it comes to that. And if they get the odd cube blown up here and there, or even the odd fleet of cubes blown up here and there, it's not really that big of a deal because there's plenty more where that came from. And they know that they can swarm pretty much any enemy and have their way. But that's a less interesting explanation than the one you came up with. Oasis, hater of the dumb sections of the pro wrestling fan base. Boy, right there with you, buddy. I didn't think I would have something to contribute this week, but now I do. I woke up this morning to a tweet from Rhea Ripley, who rightly chastised a group of people who were straight up booing the performance of Alpha Academy's Maxine Dupree at a house show. I don't know why, but I looked in the comments and saw a bunch of people asking why they aren't allowed to boo anymore. Are we really that dense that people don't understand the difference between booing and being a dickweed? By the way, from all accounts I've heard, the match wasn't even that bad. Well, yes, people are dense that they can't understand that difference. I think that's the problem. That's the kind of pro wrestling fan that you're talking about, that you say that you're a hater of. Yes, there are people that don't get it. There are people who would say, like, whoa, we're not allowed to boo. We go to a wrestling show, we're not allowed to boo. It's not about the fact that people are booing. It's about what they are booing about, right? Maxine Dupree is not a very good wrestler. I've seen her work on TV a few times. She's really bad. Like, she's really, really bad. She's so bad that a couple weeks ago, actually, I think it was probably in the Rumble. It was a couple months ago when she was in the Royal Rumble. She did a couple of spots that were so awkward and so awful that for a moment I thought, are they having her do this on purpose? Like, are they trying to tell some kind of story with her where, like, she's this bad intentionally? Because I couldn't believe that the WWE would put someone on TV at her level who is obviously not ready. Like, she's just not good at it. And maybe she will get better at it with time and training and experience. But at this point, she's awful. But here's the thing. You don't boo a wrestler for being a bad wrestler, like for being a technically poor wrestler, for not being experienced enough or trained up enough or skillful enough or whatever to do a good job wrestling, right? That's not fair. That's not, and they're not who you should be mad at. If you watch Maxine Dupree work a match and she's absolutely the shits, booing her is not fair. And you are booing the wrong person. The person you should be booing is whoever told her to go out there and have a match in front of people when she's at that level, where she's not even good enough to be working in front of people at all. Like, she's that bad. And again, I don't say that to disparage her. She's better than I would be, probably. I mean, I'm not saying I could be a better wrestler than she is, but at the level she is clearly at, she should not be put in front of people to wrestle. She's not ready. So you should be mad at whoever thought she was ready and put her out there and keeps putting her out there repeatedly when she clearly isn't ready. It's like when you go to a store or a restaurant or whatever, and it's like you go to a restaurant and you're pissed off at how expensive the prices are and you yell at the server. It's not their fault. They had nothing to do with it. I understand why you're mad, but you're not mad at the right person. You're taking it out on a person who has no fault whatsoever in the thing that you are mad about. That's the rough analogy to what this is. I understand people not being happy about, being expected to sit through a Maxine Dupree match, but booing her is not only rude to her, but it's counterproductive And it's unfair. Find out who the producer is backstage that keeps telling her, no, go ahead. Go out and wrestle and do these spots in the match that you obviously can't do. Yeah. Be mad at whoever that is. That's who deserves to be booed, not Maxine. Stephen G. Clenard. Hey, Steve, what's your favorite part of speech? Mine is the adverb. Adverbs are cool, and I love to use them. Any sentence can be improved with adverbs. You should try it. I learned about adverbs from Schoolhouse Rock, and it changed my life. I learned that you can turn an adjective into an adverb by sticking ly onto the end. I think this is why Generation X are geniuses at using adverbs. Boomers struggle with adjectives, and millennials and the young people of today are hooked on emojis. You can use adverbs to modify verbs and adjectives, but you can't stick an adverb on an emoji. This is the reason I hate emojis. My friends say I overuse adverbs, but I tell them to go fuck themselves. I love adverbs, and you can inscribe that on my tombstone. Steve, if you had to assemble your ideal Star Trek bridge crew using parts of speech, where would the adverb serve? If the adverb is neither captain nor evil admiral, then you're an idiot. That's my opinion. Sorry if it offends you. The adverb would be the chief engineer. Obviously, the adverb. I mean, I know you say the adverb should be either the captain or the evil admiral just because of the authority, but no, the adverb is what affects what the verb does or how the verb does what it does. So obviously, the adverb would be, because like the verb of the ship would be the engine, right? Because the engine is what makes the ship go. So the verb wouldn't, the parts of speech, like the verb wouldn't be a crew member. The verb would be the engine. So the adverb would be the engineer who affects the verb. So there you go. And, I feel like there needs to be space here because you left something out. You mentioned, different generations and their different ways of using parts of speech. And you mentioned emojis. Let us reserve a minute of consideration for the precursor of the emoji, the emoticon. All right. Because kids today, you talk about the young people of today. Yeah, they are hooked on emojis and they don't know how good they've got it because in my day, we didn't have emojis. All right. When you typed, a colon and a parentheses into a computer or a phone, if you were texting someone and you wanted to text them a smiley face, and you pressed colon close parenthesis, it didn't send him a little cartoon smiley face. It sent him a colon and a close parenthesis. And they had to figure out what that meant. We didn't have smiley faces when I was a kid, all right? When I was a teenager. When I was even a young adult, we had sideways smiley faces. That's all we had. And we knew what it was. And we didn't need a little yellow cartoon face to tell us what it was. It was a smiley face. The person was smiling because they were happy. Fuck. I also really like the shrug one. The ASCII art, the shrug emoticon. And my favorite is the table flip. It's the guy flipping the table. That's fantastic. Those are like the pinnacles of not just emoticons, but I feel like of human achievement. Joe McClory, I have an uncle who has decided to kill himself slowly and painfully because he suffers delusions. I try to be understanding of belief, but it is honestly hard to think of it any other way. He was diagnosed with cancer and is refusing treatment, leaving it to God's hands. I don't know what to do or how to do it. How do you tell a man he's dying to impress his imaginary friend? How do you stand by and not say anything as he does? How do you convince him he is letting his kids live in a world without their father for nothing? And how do you go to his funeral and comfort those kids while you hear people say he is in a better place now without screaming, no, he's not, and this delusion is why he's gone? Fuck, why is this so hard? Well, I'm very sorry that it is hard, my friend. It's obviously affecting you. I mean, my go-to solution is always stay out of it. But if you can't stay out of it, or you feel that you shouldn't because you are close to your uncle and you love him and you don't want this to happen and you don't want him to do this to the rest of his family, that's a rough situation. And I really don't know what to do. You're asking questions that I think don't really have a good answer. I mean, How do you stand by and not say anything as he does? I mean, you can't drag him to the hospital and plug him into chemotherapy. You know, you can't force him to get treatment that he just refuses to get. And you can't convince him that his beliefs are false or at the very least misguided when he is already so deeply attached to them that he's making this kind of decision based on them. I mean, look, you and I know that this is an incredibly foolish thing to do. That as you describe it, that it is basically just a slow motion suicide. And I don't know what kind of cancer he has, but presumably it from the way you're describing it, it's not automatically terminal. Like, it could be treated. There is a chance if he pursued a medical solution that he could beat it. And he's just choosing not to. But at the end of the day, you have to respect his decision. I mean, you don't have to respect his decision, but you have to respect that he has the right to make it. I understand not respecting the decision because it's a horseshit decision based on, a very, very faulty premise. And I mean, but yeah, I don't know if he really doesn't want to get treatment. I mean, maybe he's saying I'm leaving it in God's hands because he really just wants to give up. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe he's using that as an excuse to say, well, if, I'm just going to put it in God's hands. Maybe he's scared of what treatment would be like. Maybe he's afraid it would be too rough on him. Maybe he's afraid he would be spending the remainder of his time in misery. Maybe he's afraid it would be all for nothing. He'd get radiation treatments and he'd have burns on his skin and he'd lose weight and he'd lose his hair and he'd lose his appetite and he'd be sick and miserable for however long the chemo and the radiation and whatever they needed for him to do would take. And, maybe he's afraid he'd need to have surgery that would injure him or debilitate him or leave him disabled or whatever. And he's afraid that it won't be worth it. That his quality of life would take such a massive hit that he would rather just put it in God's hands. Or maybe he's just a dipshit, and he doesn't think any of those things. And he genuinely believes like, well, if the Lord wants to cure me, he'll cure me. Like maybe he's just a fool. I don't know. But I can imagine how difficult it is for you and for his kids, and for anybody who cares about him. And I wish I knew what to tell you. I wish I knew what you could say to him to get him to screw his head on and actually pursue some kind of treatment for it rather than just say, well, whatever happens, happens. That must be unspeakably frustrating. And I'm very sorry that you're in that situation. Isaiah Taylor. So last week I watched a VHS copy of the 1996 IMAX film Cosmic Voyage, narrated by Morgan Freeman. As you know, Steve, I'm a staunch atheist, but I decided to message a dear friend who's a Christian, Lutheran, I think, and we discussed how the universe was created. To be fair, we've learned a lot about the universe, but even this doesn't describe exactly where the actual universe came from. So, could our universe have been created by a superintelligence? Aliens, AI, or maybe something else? Maybe these beings or being created our laws of physics only for them to disregard them themselves? Perhaps our creators are from a Type 4 civilization capable of creating and destroying universes at will? The Kardashev scale goes only to 3, so basically I just made 4 up. The fictional Q and Thanos could be classified as members of a Type 4 civilization. This could also include the hypothetical God concept. Thoughts? Well, of course, that's all those things you're proposing are possible. Yes. I mean, the thing is, we don't know what the ultimate cause of the creation of our universe was. We can reason through observation and, through higher levels of math and various forms of cosmology that there was a big bang, that at some point what we now experience as the universe was compacted in an infinitesimally small point that then at some point, for some reason, began to expand and eventually yielded the universe that we have today. But we don't know what happened before that, and we don't know what caused it to expand, and we don't know where the matter that began to expand came from in the first place. Like, there are a lot of questions that we'll probably never know the answers to. Like, there are questions that would seem to require us to be able to have information about things that happened outside the universe or before the universe existed, if that term even has any meaning. And I don't even know if there's a theoretical idea for how we would go about getting that information. Like, how do we see outside the universe? How do we see before the Big Bang? How do we even conceive of before the Big Bang, considering that what we experience as time is theorized to have also originated from the Big Bang? So, like, there's all kinds of questions that we'll probably never know the answer to. Not exactly. So, yeah, could it have been aliens? Could it have been AI? Could this all be an experiment in some science lab in a much larger pre-existing universe? Sure. Can't prove it's not. We'll probably never know whether it is. So yes, it could be anything. That's why I don't really find those kinds of proposals all that interesting. I mean, yeah, it's interesting in kind of a fun way and kind of a philosophical way. Like, oh, we could be an experiment running on someone's workbench in another universe. Yeah, we could. It's kind of a fun idea to speculate about, but like, scientifically, that's why it's important to just follow the evidence and to only have a belief in things that are established by evidence or are at least pointed at by evidence. Like, there's no way to know to say, well, maybe a powerful AI created our universe. There's no way to falsify that. Like, that's not a scientific hypothesis, because what's the experiment? What's the observation you can make to demonstrate that that isn't true? Hypothetically, like, you can't. There's no way to disprove it, right? We could say that our universe is contained in a marble in somebody's pocket in a larger universe. There's no way to know whether that's true. And we'll never be able to falsify that or to verify it. So, they're fun ideas, like, they're fun concepts, but I question anyone who says that they, actually believe that. I would sort of look at side-eyed, because there's no way you can know that. Like, the thing about the origin of the universe is we do not know, and we may never know specifically what started the chain of events in motion that led to all of this. Kara Hughes, hi Steve, hope you are well. You have stated in the past that you're a Batman fan, or is that a DC fan? Actually, I believe I'm a DC Comics guy, Kara. Since that includes Superman 2, or as I sometimes call him, the Big Blue Boy Scout, you've done a couple of recaps of Batman stories, which have been very interesting. What is your absolute favorite Batman comic? I have to say, for me, it's a toss-up between Prey and Venom. Would love to hear your thoughts, Kara. I like both of those. I especially like Prey. Venom is good. Like, I enjoy Venom. And of course, Venom was very important for what it led to, because it introduced Bane and it was kind of a precursor to Nightfall and all of that. You mentioned Prey. I think the story in Legends of the Dark Knight, the story arc that followed Prey in Legends of the Dark Knight, because I think Prey, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Prey was the first story arc in Batman Legends of the Dark Knight. And the second story arc in Legends of the Dark Knight was Gothic. And Gothic is one of my very favorite Batman comics. Gothic is fantastic. But to answer your question as specifically and as clearly and definitively as I can, I do think I have an absolute favorite Batman comic, or an absolute favorite Batman comic story, because it's not the story that I'm going to mention is not the entire issue. It's just, it's one story in an issue with several stories, but it's actually in Batman Black and White #1, the original Batman Black and White miniseries from back in the 90s. And it's called Perpetual Mourning. And it's this perfect 6 or 8 page Batman story. And it's the story of Batman investigating a murder. He arrives at a crime scene where a woman has been murdered. He investigates the killing. He performs an autopsy on her. He finds evidence that, first allows him to identify her and then allows him to retrace her steps and eventually get to a point where he's able to track down her killer. And it's presented very solemnly, very sadly, very serious, but it's really poetic and beautiful. And it is my favorite single Batman story and one of the best comic book stories I've ever read. It's absolute genius, and it's brilliant, and it's beautiful, and it's a work of art. So if you've never read Perpetual Mourning, I would Google that and see if you can find that online somewhere. See if you can find a trade paperback that has it collected or something. It was in Batman Black and White #1. And like I say, if you have read that one, hopefully you enjoyed it too. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. Perpetual Mourning, my favorite Batman story. Dataport Doll, who finally returned from her YouTube hiatus. Evening, Steve. I've become frustrated with how the DNC are handling this election cycle so far. There was a huge meta-analysis of 2016 that concluded that Trump got billions, with a B, in free advertising because the media and his opponents focused so much on what Orange Man said today. 2020 was a little more reined in, what with the global health crisis. That is not yet fully resolved, by the way. But this year we seem to be back on form. Questions about Biden's 2020 election promises, or his 2024 promises, or his historically ultra-Zionist opinions is met with, but what about what Orange Man said? Here, let me link to 3 articles detailing it and guaranteeing more revenue for covering the crap that comes out of his mouth. This reeks of forgetting the past, and so quickly, too. Aside from the little bighorn level of lawsuits riding down his campaign, I would be quite pleased as a Trump strategist. Do you see the same problem I do, or am I seeing censor ghosts? No, I agree with you. My problem is not so much the amount of coverage Trump gets. It's the slant of it. It's how normal so much of what he is doing and so much of what he is faced with is being treated as. Like, he is a former president of the United States who has been found liable in multiple lawsuits for hundreds of millions of dollars, has been found liable for sexual assault in one of them, and liable for massive financial fraud in the other. And those are just the non-criminals things. Like, he's also been indicted in multiple cases on a total of 91 criminal counts, which he will at some point be going to trial for later this year. Right? And yet when the media covers these stories, like they cover the stories and they treat them as though they're a big deal. And they do talk about like how unprecedented all of this is and what an important historical event all of this is. But like, whenever any Republican is interviewed, whenever any member of Congress who supports Trump is interviewed, I do not understand why they are not asked, how can you support a candidate from your party being the nominee of your party that is facing this kind of criminal prosecution? Like, this is unheard of in American history for the presumptive nominee of a major party to be indicted on so many criminal counts and be about to go to trial on multiple criminal counts. Like, how can you as a Republican justify supporting this man and seeing him be nominated as your presidential candidate? Like, what else does someone have to do to warrant being like, why are there not dozens, hundreds of elected Republicans demanding that he cease his campaign and make way for someone else to be the candidate? But nothing close to that has happened. Exactly the opposite has happened. They've circled the wagons around him. And the fact that that's just kind of being shrugged off as like, oh, the Republicans, they sure are loyal to Trump, like, is baffling to me. And that's just one example of it. But yeah, the normalization of Trump and just his whole deal has been incredibly frustrating, and yes, is very damaging to our political system, um, and is damaging to the credibility of the political media, because it's like, it feels like you're not taking this as seriously as you should. It feels like you're not uh, reporting this the way it should be reported. And, so no, you are definitely not seeing censor ghosts. I see the same problem. I see the same problem. Um, I don't think things are as rosy for Trump as you suggest there when you say, like, you would be quite pleased as a Trump strategist. Like, I still think it's more likely than not that he loses the election. Um, but it's way closer than it ought to be. Like, he shouldn't even be on the ballot. He shouldn't even be on the ballot. Never mind that he should be disqualified for being an insurrectionist. And there's a whole ass amendment to the Constitution that says you don't get to run for president or any other federal office if you are involved in an insurrection. Like, never mind that. That should also be kind of a bigger deal. But even without that, just the fact that he is a 91 times indicted criminal defendant should be enough for his own party to say, okay, we're going to go in a different direction this time. You don't get to be our nominee. This is too much for us. Like, you go take care of your problems. We'll find someone else to run for office. Okay. We don't need you. We'll get somebody else. Like, the fact that that hasn't happened is astonishing. And the fact that the media is not making a bigger deal about the fact that that is not happening is astonishing. John Burns, as a Star Trek purist, you must be excited about the World War III prophecy coming true. Am I right? You can't let The Simpsons outpredict Star Trek. No, John, you are not right, because I am not a Star Trek purist. So there. Carlisle the Cinephile. Hello there, Steve. I'm about to begin a campaign of the Star Trek Adventures role-playing game. My story is set during the same time period as Strange New Worlds on board the USS Le Guin. The ship is being sent on a 5-year mission to explore the Shackleton Expanse, a relatively unexplored region of space. I'm fishing for potential plot hooks and scenarios I could use for adventures. This campaign will play a little fast and loose with continuity. For instance, I have an adventure plan that involves the Borg, despite this being set in the 23rd century. Do you have any ideas for plot lines I could include? No. No, I hate to answer your question like that, but no, I have no ideas. But thank you for asking. And I mean, if you watch this or you're in the chat or you're looking at the chat replay later, if anybody watching has any suggestions, please feel free to throw them in the chat. Maybe Carlisle can make use of them. But no, I honestly have no ideas for plot lines you could use in your Star Trek role-playing game. But thank you for asking. Shazy. Good evening, Steve. I work from home full time, and that allows me to listen to hours upon hours of uninterrupted music. I prefer listening solely to instrumental music for reading while listening to vocal music when doing chores or exercise. Could you please give me recommendations for each? I know that you are a fan of Bruce Springsteen and Modest Mouse, but unfortunately, I did not click with the latter. Also, do you recommend vinyl? Thanks. I mean, I don't not recommend vinyl, but I'm not an evangelist for it or anything. I'm not one of those guys that's like, no, you have to listen to vinyl, dude. Vinyl's the best. Like, listen to whatever you want and is most convenient for you. Like, I'm not, if you say, oh, I listen to MP3s on my phone, I'm not going to like turn my nose up at it and go, oh, you can't do it that way. Like, I'm not a snob. I'm not an audiophile snob. Listen to it in whatever format you want to listen to it. I'm sorry you didn't like Modest Mouse. I mean, that means we can't be friends. But, you know, it's your own taste, just whatever. For non-instrumental, for music with vocals, I mean, God, I like classic 1960s and 70s R&B. I mean, I love Sam Cooke. Sam Cooke is one of my favorite musicians, singers ever. I love Ray Charles. I love Johnny Cash. I love a lot of like classic country. And even country like from the 80s, you know, like Steve Earle is great. Who else? Graham Parson and Emmylou Harris. Oh, if you can find Graham Parsons' first solo album that and Emmylou Harris joins him on vocals on a lot of those songs, and oh my God, amazing. Amy Mann. I love Amy Mann. Nico Case. Oh my God. One of the greatest voices ever. I love Nico Case. I could listen to Nico Case sing the phone book. She's incredible. As for non-instrumental music, I mean, I like movie scores. I was just listening to the score from the Batman yesterday, one of my favorite movie scores of all time, Michael Giacchino. Pretty much anything Giacchino is great. And I mean, I love most of the classic late 20th century, early 21st century film composers, Danny Elfman and James Horner and Alan Silvestri, all of the giants, the big film composers that get all the work. Philip Glass can get kind of samey, because he does his Philip Glass thing, but I mean, a lot of it's really good. Samuel Barber. I mean, everybody knows, or most people know Barber for Adagio for Strings, and rightly so, because it's a fantastic piece of music. But a lot of Barber's other stuff, besides Adagio, is very good as well. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot of possibilities out there. But yeah, it breaks my heart that she didn't vibe with Modest Mouse. Absolutely breaks my heart. I'm just gonna have to delete you, I guess. Said Merc. Hey Steve, you've often defended the Kelvin timeline films. I agree that Star Trek 2009 is all right and Beyond is a gem, but how can you stand in defense of Into Darkness? The people who made the movie trying to pretend it didn't have Khan in it, casting a very white British man as Khan Noonien Singh, ending their film with a forced, weak facsimile of a much better film, while you can feel how clever they think they are being oozing out of the frame. This may be the only Star Trek movie that I hate. I charge you, sir, to defend it. P.S. Did you see that Superman Legacy is now just Superman? I think maybe they realize there technically hasn't been a movie titled Superman yet and simplified. How are you feeling about this perspective film in general, about the casting, what we know of the premise? Do we know anything about the premise at this point? I haven't heard anything about the premise. I think the cast is great. I'm very excited by the fact that James Gunn is writing and directing it himself. And yes, Superman Legacy. I mean, I don't really care what they call it. I am cautiously optimistic. I'll put it. I'm cautiously optimistic, and I am very much looking forward to it being a thing that exists and getting to see for myself how good it is, or how bad it is. But hopefully, it's good. So yes, I'm optimistic about it and excited about it. As for Into Darkness, okay, I'll defend it in a couple. First of all, the casting thing is a legitimate criticism, but Into Darkness is not the only film guilty of that. Unfortunately, there's a lot of movies that cast white actors to play characters of color, and it sucks, and I wish it didn't happen, but it does, and Into Darkness is not the only film guilty of that, even in recent years. So like, I'm not going to be especially mad at it for that. I mean, Ricardo Montalban was not the same race as the character of Khan is meant to be either. Now, he is a person of color, so you can say, well, at least they hired a person of color to play a character of color, even if the actor and the character were of different backgrounds. But so I'm not gonna harp on that. I'll just say I agree the casting is an issue. And the marketing, I don't hold that against the movie. When I watch the movie, I judge the movie that's in front of me. Like, I don't care how cute they were about, well, it's not really Khan, and it turns out to be Khan. I don't care. Like, I saw the movie. I judged the movie based on the movie I saw, not on how they marketed it. And as for the rest of it, I mean, yeah, the bits where they tried to do the inversion of Wrath of Khan are too clever. I'll agree with you there. But the reason why I defend it and the reason why I say it's a good movie is I think even though it does some things that I would say it would be better off not doing, it executes everything very well. Like that inverted death scene where Kirk is the one who is exposed to radiation and is dying, and Spock is the one on the other side. Like, even though you can say that they just shouldn't have done that, that's a bad idea, it's a really well acted scene. Like, it's a really well done scene, and it's well staged, and Kirk's, efforts to realign the engine in, like their version of that, I really, really love. because they don't do technobabble at all. And they even, I think, do a better job visually than they did with Spock in Wrath of Khan. And when Spock's in Wrath of Khan, fixing the engine, and getting exposed to radiation, like, you get the idea of what he's doing, but you can't really follow what he's doing. Like, he's reaching his hand in somewhere and he's rearranging something or throwing something out. Like, you can tell Spock's doing something, and then you see, oh, it worked, right? And then he's exposed to the radiation and he dies. So it doesn't really matter that you can't see specifically what he's doing. Like, that's not what the scene is about. And you can follow it well enough to get what you're supposed to get for that scene to matter. So it's not really a problem with that scene, but I do appreciate in Kirk's version in Into Darkness, there's an obvious visual problem that he's trying to correct. There's two big nodes and one of them is cockeyed. They're out of alignment, and he's trying to kick the one that's off to the side back into position. It's a really easy, obvious visual thing, so you can see what he's trying to do, right? So his efforts have meaning. It's a visual, physical thing that he's trying to do. And I really, really like that and really appreciate that, and think that was a genuinely clever innovation of the writers for their version of that scene. Also, it's one of only, I think, 3 Star Trek movies, period, that has obvious, identifiable, clearly intentional political content. Star Trek 4, of course, is the Save the Whales movie and has a very strong and obvious environmental message. And then Star Trek 6 is the Cold War allegory. Other than that, I really don't think any Star Trek movies other than Into Darkness have a whole lot of really strong political commentary. And Into Darkness has a whole bit about drone warfare and extrajudicial executions and things that were very serious, oft discussed issues in 2011, 2012, when this movie came out. Like, people forget that was something that was a big issue during the Obama administration. And it should still be an issue today because it's still done. Like, it's not like we just stopped doing it. And it's not like Obama was the first one to do it. Bush did it as well. Clinton did it as well. But the idea of the U.S. military using drones and using just extrajudicial military missions, military strikes to kill people without giving them a fair trial, with just sort of deciding, okay, this guy is a bad guy. We're pretty sure he's a bad guy. We're going to just go ahead and kill him. Right? That was a big controversy and a big issue, and it should have been. And Star Trek Into Darkness makes a movie that is at least partially about that in a really obvious way, to the point that Scotty quits the Enterprise because he refuses to take part in it. Starfleet orders Kirk to use these super duper photon torpedoes to kill Khan, to go to Klingon territory and to conduct an extrajudicial execution of Khan. And at first, Kirk is going to do it. He eventually decides not to, but at first, Kirk is going to do it. And Scotty says, I'm not going to do this. I quit. If you expect me to take part in this, I will not. I refuse. I resign. And then they make Scotty, they don't just do that for a political statement. It functions in the plot. That's the reason why Scotty is not on the Enterprise. And then they find a really clever way to bring Scotty back into it that serves the plot. Like, it's, for all the criticism it gets for being derivative and for just copycatting Star Trek II and all of these other criticisms that it does deserve, I'm not denying any of those. Apart from those issues, it's a really well put together, well structured film. And I appreciate that. So yes, I acknowledge the criticisms, but I think a lot of people who don't like it get stuck on the issues that you bring up, and they don't notice all the stuff that the movie does really, really well. And again, yeah, you can still not like it. It's a matter of taste. You can think that Into Darkness is the shittiest movie you've ever seen. That's completely fine. It's just, nobody's right and nobody's wrong. It's a matter of opinion. But I see a lot of things in it that are really, really well done, despite the sometimes major missteps that it takes. No one of consequence. This is Dana, everybody. I had a very unpleasant thing happen today, and consequently, I feel miserable. Please tell us a story that will help us find a smile. Maybe something that involves Star. I don't know. So, for those of you who don't know, Star was my dog when I was a child and into my young adulthood. Star lived to be 16. I got her when I was 5, and she died when I was 21. And she died of natural causes. We didn't have to take her and have her put down or anything. Like she lived a nice long life and passed away on her own. And she was, everybody says this about their dog, but she was the best dog in the world. I remember when we first got her, because I had been asking my parents for a dog for a while. Like I really wanted a dog. And I remember actually there was a stray who wandered into our yard one day, and he was a black lab, and he was the nicest dog. And he came in and he hung out. He just kind of wandered into our yard, and we didn't know where he was from or who he belonged to. And he just kind of wandered over to our house, and he was really sweet and really nice. And he laid down in our garage, and just kind of hung out with us. And eventually his owner came looking for him, and he went home. But man, I wanted a dog after that. Like, ooh, man, I wanted a dog. So a few months after that, my parents got me a dog. They got me Star, and she was also a black lab. And she was the runt of her litter. She was just little when she was a puppy. And we named her Star because she was all black, except she had a white patch of fur on her chest, right at the base of her neck, like a star in a black sky. So we named her Star. Her full name was Saturn Star. Because I also had an affinity for the planet Saturn, and I thought Saturn Star was a cool name for a dog. But we always just called her Star. And when I came home from school that day and she was there, my mom and dad were standing there, like the cats who ate the canaries, right? Waiting for me to notice. And mom said, "There's a surprise for you under the table." And I looked under the kitchen table and I didn't see anything. And I said, "I don't see anything." Like I thought they were like playing a trick on me or making fun of me or whatever. And I just kind of laughed and said, there's nothing there. And they said, "Look again." So I looked again. And I saw nothing. There was nothing there. And I said, I don't know. I don't see anything. So finally, they pulled one of the chairs out from under the table. And I looked again. And I guess having the chair out of the way let enough extra light in under the table that I finally saw her. She was so little and so black that she was lost in the shadows under the table. I couldn't see her until the third time I looked when they had pulled the chair out. And there she was. And she was just this perfect little thing. And she grew up and she became an amazing, awesome dog. She would wag her butt when she was happy. She wouldn't just wag her tail. She would wag her whole butt. She loved to play fight with my dad. She would play fight with all of us. Like we would all, wrestle with her and stuff, but she loved to pretend to fight my dad. She would never actually harm him in any way. But dad would play a game with her where dad would pretend to be angry at mom, and Star would step in between them, and would like, "Ooh," but she wasn't really mad. Like she never was like actually mad at him. But she would just kind of, and because she, her tail would wag and she'd get down low and kind of look up at him and wiggle around and be like, "Ooh," and he would be like, "Don't you growl at me." And they had this little game that they played. And she, typical dog stuff. If I was having a bad day, she would come and cheer me up. She would curl up next to me. She would sleep in my bed with me sometimes. She was the best, and we all loved her. My brother and I. She was really close with my mom. My dad loved her. Like she was the best dog in the world. And I still think about her a lot, and I still miss her. And I haven't had another dog since. But she was just, she was the best dog. She was the best dog. And I'm sorry, that's not like a specific story. I don't really know if I have like a specific Star story that I can tell you, but just getting to, to know her and to have her in my life for as long as she was is something that I will always be incredibly grateful for. And hopefully everybody who has ever had a dog or has a dog now can relate to that, because they're just the best. When you get a really special dog, like I don't know if anybody saw Jon Stewart talk about his dog this week, but that was something special, because it's like I know exactly how he feels. He was talking, Jon Stewart's dog just died this past week, and it's like I know exactly how you feel. I know exactly how you feel, because they really are the best. Russell, hey Steve, once again I am doing this under the wire. I know Star Trek is a made-up show. However, it's a made up. You and several others have devoted hours upon countless hours doing reviews, character assessments, and story arcs. Why? Because I believe true Trek fans not only enjoy the shows for our worth, but inspire to become that great society in which the utopia world exists. But how realistic is it? Oh, without a doubt, I truly believe if humans really wanted to, they would eliminate. But what about police, and what about capitalism? Regardless on how you fall on these issues, what's the likelihood that we could exist without them? I will dive in deeper because I want to get into your question, but this is under the gun and I'm limited anyways, so hope you are well. See you soon. I feel like it's kind of a failure of imagination to assume that we couldn't exist without capitalism, or without police. I mean, I think it's I find it less realistic to say we could ever exist without some form of police than we could without capitalism. I don't think it's realistic that we'll get to a post-capitalist society in my lifetime, but theoretically, I don't see any reason why we couldn't. Like, there's nothing about capitalism as a system to me that makes it seem like we would need to live under that system. That argument doesn't make sense to me. Now, how do we get to a non-capitalist society from where we are now? That's really tough. Like that is a struggle, and that is a very difficult problem to solve. But in theory, could we have a society that is other than capitalist? I don't see why not. As for police, I think we can and desperately need to radically rethink how we do policing, but I think we would always need to have some kind of police-like presence in society. Like, no matter how perfect a society you have, there will always be people who act to harm others, who act against the better interests of the society as a whole. And it only makes sense to me that you would have a group of people empowered to do something about that, to protect people from those kinds of people, to hold those kinds of people accountable, to investigate crimes. When somebody steals from somebody, or somebody is killed, or somebody is assaulted, and it's not immediately obvious who the culprit is, you would need people to investigate crimes. And that is one part of what police do. That's not all that they do. And it may be, and of course it may be, the best thing that we take a lot of the current responsibilities of the police as they are constituted and spread them out among different organizations. Like, that might be a good idea too. But I feel like there would always need to be some people in society, whether it's one agency or a group of agencies, that do the kinds of things that we need police to do. But it doesn't mean it would have to look like it does now. I don't think it should look like it does now. I think it should be very different. And clearly, police should be behaving differently and should have a different relationship with the rest of their communities than they do now. But no, I don't think it's unrealistic to say that such things are possible. Now, how do we get there? Again, practically speaking, how do we get there? That's really challenging. But is it possible? Just hypothetically? Yes, of course. I have no doubt that it is possible. Air One Fire, I am done. I did both of the large projects, mostly at the last possible deadline, but I did them and made a bunch of money. And since then, I've been a good boy mostly. I did a bit of work on each project every day, which is a habit I'm trying to work on, though usually late in the evening, which is a habit I'm trying to break. I took less days off than there were weekends. So far, it's going surprisingly good, even in terms of social and even romantic life. I'm more hopeful than in a very long while, even made long-term financial plans. So I guess thanks for being a very, very cheap therapist. That much less than $1 a month is paying off bigly, and I recommend everyone join in. Now that I have time for more frivolous questions, what other review batches do you plan? Ferengi episodes, transporter episodes, comedy episodes? Those are totally not suggestions. Actually, Ferengi episodes is probably coming at some point. It's not on my calendar right now, but there are so many Star Trek episodes, and as long as people watch the reviews and I have fun doing them, I intend to continue doing them. So I'm sure I will get around to doing a batch of Ferengi episodes at some point. But yeah, the next batch, as I mentioned at the end of the review, at this week's review was the last review in the bottle episodes batch, and the next batch will be worst episodes, and that'll be the one of the popular picks for worst episode of each series. And then after that, I think after that, I'm doing holodeck episodes, or at some point later this year, I'm doing holodeck episodes, I know. And I'm going to do a batch of the episodes related to the augments at some point this year. Again, I'm just going from memory on this. So it'll be Space Seed and then the 3 augments episodes from Enterprise. So that'll be like just a short 4-episode batch. I'm going to do a grab bag where it's just randomly selected episodes. I'll do a randomly selected episode from each series that I'm reviewing. So yeah, I mean, I have all of this year, all of 2024 scheduled, and I have episodes kind of thrown together for batches for next year as well. Not enough to cover all of next year, but I have ideas for what would come, in 2025, but I don't want to schedule too far ahead. But yeah, I have ideas for, for other batches. And of course, most of the time, because I don't want a particular batch of episodes to go on forever, I usually like to max out at 8. And if I can do 6 or 7 instead of 8, I'd rather do that. So then I can move on to another theme. But of course, I do one batch that doesn't exhaust every single episode that could fall into that category. So like there are lots of other bottle episodes that I can still do. So if I want to at some point in the future, I can do another batch of bottle episodes. I already have plans for at least 2 batches of holodeck episodes. I'm going to do one this year and then another batch for at some point in the future after this year. Because there's so goddamn many holodeck episodes. So, yeah, I have ideas for lots of other batches. And I think Ferengi episodes is going to come around at some point. And probably comedy episodes too. Those are both really transporter episodes. I don't know if there are quite so many. But yeah, Ferengi episodes and comedy episodes, even though you say they're not suggestions, they'll probably be batches with those themes in some form or another at some point. Matt L., what are your views on propaganda? More propaganda. What are your views on propaganda shows like The Rookie, Law and Order, etc., where cops and the justice system is rarely, if ever, shown to be wrong? Overall, I think they can negatively shift perception towards minorities and skew belief that real-life cops are as valiant, etc., as their fictional counterparts. Overall, though, I guess I take the Cassidy Yates opinion that it shows how policing and such should be, or could be, if real life police behaved as they should. Yeah, and I've never watched The Rookie, but I haven't watched Law and Order recently, but I used to watch Law and Order religiously in the 90s. And I mean, Law and Order is one of those shows that does acknowledge the problems with policing. Like sometimes it feels like it's just paying lip service to it, but it does at least acknowledge that there are problems. Like it doesn't pretend that the justice system is perfect. Yeah, I mean, I mostly agree with your Cassidy Yates opinion. The way she described Vic Fontaine's hologram version of Las Vegas, that it's the way it could have been or should have been. And it kind of ties into it's sort of the opposite of the earlier question about propaganda shows, but taken, just the same basic idea, which is, yeah, the shows present an idealized version of policing, but maybe people can use that as a role model if they become cops, or to push for reform and say, look, the real thing is not like Law and Order. Real cops aren't like that. They aren't that noble. They aren't that incorruptible. So why don't we try to make the real thing more like the fiction, right? You can use it for that. But, I've thought for a long time, a really interesting way of exploring that from by doing a cop show would be to do a cop show centered on an internal affairs squad. And I'm not sure if that's ever been done. I don't think it's ever been done in any sort of notable way, at least in American television. But I would love to see a cop show where the heroes are internal affairs officers and the stories are about them investigating other cops for their crimes or their corruption or their abuses or whatever. I think it's a really great premise for a show because I don't think it's ever been done before. And it's the perfect vehicle to tell stories about the need for police reform. I think that's a really good idea that nobody's, at least it's a good idea for an idea. It's not specific enough to actually be a pitch for a show, but it's a vague concept. A cop show centered on internal affairs cops whose job it is to investigate other cops. I think that's a really good idea and could be a way of doing a cop show that gets away with not being propaganda, or at least not being as much propaganda as lots of other cop shows are. Last question from a patron or a member from MW Ridra in Under the Wire. Hey, Steve, hope you are well. Sorry I missed the last Ask Away. I was vacationing in the mountains with my spouse. Anyway, I was thinking about aliens in sci-fi that are just anthropomorphic animals. What do you think of them? A lazy concept that further strains suspension of disbelief, or a handy writing shorthand so the viewer knows what the species is without needing it explained? Well, I think it really depends on the story. I mean, sometimes it could come across as lazy, but sometimes it, wouldn't make any difference. Like, when we're talking about a sci-fi story, I really don't think having aliens that are anthropomorphized animals would have any effect on my suspension of disbelief. Like, my suspension of disbelief is not broken by stuff like that. Like, I don't care about the wacky sci-fi stuff. I don't care about like bad science or outlandish aliens or any of that. None of that affects my suspension of disbelief. I'm willing to go with pretty much anything if it's a good enough story. What breaks my suspension of disbelief is like bad storytelling. But in terms of like aliens that, oh, come on, it's obvious they're just dogs, right? It's like, okay, that's fine. If it's a good story, I don't care. I've said before, I don't care, especially in a show like Star Trek, or even like Star Wars, or, I don't care if the aliens are just humans. Like, I don't give a shit. If they're like, they're not, they're meant to not be humans. They're meant to be, they're the ancient civilization from the planet, Xanthar or whatever the fuck. But they look just like humans. Like, there's no makeup or anything. They just look like humans. Okay. I'll go with it. I don't care. I don't need an explanation. Oh, it must be a parallel evolution, or maybe they're a lost colony. No, sure. You don't need to do that. I don't care. They're people from another planet. That's all I need. I don't care that they look just like us. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to the story. I don't give a shit. Tell me the story. I'm perfectly willing to accept that there are people that look just like humans on some planet on the other side of the galaxy. Whatever. Let's just get on with it. Like, what's this about? I don't care about where the people came from, unless that's actually an important part of the story. If it's not, if this is just a planet that Captain Kirk, came to visit for some reason, and there are these people with a specific problem that gets us involved in a story, like, that's fine. Let's do that. I don't care why they look the way they do. I don't give a shit. So yeah, it doesn't bother me. It would only bother me if it was a really shitty story. That's really all I'm here for. Make the aliens look however you want. Doesn't make a difference. Just tell me a good story. All right. That is it for the patron and member questions. Now, I am about to turn my full attention to all of you still with me in the live chat, but before I do that, it's time for a proper Stuffy short. We got a quick little Stuffy short earlier with the mirror bit, but this is a proper Stuffy short. And again, as usual, it will go up on its own as a YouTube short on this channel tomorrow, but you get to see the premiere tonight. In fact, right now. Yes, I'd like to report a missing person. Sure, I can describe him. He's a dog. He's... What kind of dog? Hang on. Never mind, he just walked in. Thank you. You had me worried sick.
I was gone for 15 minutes.
You didn't even tell me you were leaving. And where have you been?
I went to the bank.
Who goes to the bank?
People with great aunts who live in Canada and send them Canadian checks in their birthday cards.
It's not your birthday.
Aunt Eunice always forgets my birthday, so she sends me birthday cards 4 or 5 times a year just to cover her bases. I deposit the checks in a separate account and use that money to buy her something nice on her birthday. It's a good system.
Her checks are in Canadian dollars?
That's right.
You're not getting her anything that nice. Major slam on Canadian money. All right, let's see what's going on in the live chat. Hi, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. Let me see. Are there any super chats? Yes, there are. From not a banned account. Well, not yet. How can we stay positive in a world where climate change and a fascist running for re-election to the presidency in America is a reality? Hold to the hope that we can change those things is a big part of it. Oh, Kara, you've read Gothic, and that is fantastic. Yes, Gothic is so good. Grant Morrison wrote it, and of course he's a great writer, or they are a great writer. And the art is by Klaus Janson, who's one of my favorite artists ever, especially Batman artists. He does a lot of inking, or did a lot of inking. I'm not sure how active he is anymore, but when he would do his own pencils as well as inking, oh, I loved his sketchy style, especially when he was doing Batman. Fantastic artist. I love him so much. Kirok 2011 says, by the way, is Goofy a dog? Fuck it. Yes, Goofy's a dog. Oasis says, thanks for answering, Steve. Part of the problem with Maxine is that I think they don't want to separate her from Chad Gable and Otis, so they're resorting to putting her on the house show circuit. Yeah, but I mean, like, that makes sense, but like, she's at such a level of skill that, like, I don't even think she should be working house shows at this point. I think she should be in the performance center wrestling training matches where there's not a public audience. I mean, some of those spots she was trying in the Rumble were so bad. And like I said, not her fault. And she doesn't deserve to be taking shit for it. Like, she's not at the point where she should be wrestling in front of people. I really don't think, unless it's like a small, like, local Florida NXT show, you know, like maybe that, where she's wrestling in front of 200 or 300 people. But not on like a main level WWE house show. Couple more super chats coming in. Here's one from John Burns. Line of Duty TV series 2012 to 2021, BBC Internal Affairs series. Might want to check it out. Interesting. I'll check it out, or I might not check it out because you said you mentioned it before and I didn't check it out. But maybe I will this time. Thanks for the super chat. Cast Iron Chaos says, Quark, then there was the time I sold that fake midichlorian detector to, what's his name? Qui-Gon? That's good. I like that. Fake midichlorian detector. And super chat from Kirok says, Steve, I don't like Trump or Biden, so I don't vote. Well, then you don't count. I don't respect people who don't vote. People who could vote but choose not to. I do not. I mean, you have the right to do it. You have the right not to vote. I don't think people should be forced to vote. I don't believe in compulsory voting. But if you choose not to vote, I don't respect that choice. I mean, you can not like Biden, but if you think Biden is preferable to Trump, even by that much, you should vote for Biden. You know, it's called harm reduction. Yes, it's the lesser of two evils, but guess what? That's where we're at. You know, it's nice that you can say, oh, I'm going to not vote for either one of them because that way my conscience is clear. So you're choosing your conscience and your comfort over what is better for the country. I don't support that, and I don't respect that. 255 AD says Stuffy is modeled on a Basset Hound. Perhaps. I'm actually not sure what dog Stuffy is supposed to be, but Basset Hound is as close as anything. He does have kind of a I can't think of his name now. But there's the cartoon Basset Hound. 205 AD says, I feel like some I won't vote for Biden leftists are just thinking if Trump wins, maybe things will get worse, but I won't be morally culpable. Is that too ungenerous? No, I think a lot of leftists who are choosing not to vote for Biden, like I was just giving Kirak a hard time for, and I don't think Kirak would call himself a leftist necessarily, but they're choosing their conscience and their moral comfort over making a difficult choice, but a choice that would be better for the country. You know, I don't like Biden. Biden's terrible. I'm not going to vote for him. So you're making it easier for Trump, who is even worse, to win. Like, I get people who don't like Biden, who aren't comfortable voting for Biden. I'm not saying you need to vote for Joe Biden and like it. No, of course not. There's so many reasons, even apart from, you know, his enabling of Israel and their assault on Palestine, even apart from that. And that by itself is plenty. But even apart from that, there's other reasons. You know, his border policy. There's another one. To not like Joe Biden. I get it. But it's going to be one of two guys after November. Like one of those two guys is going to win the election and be the president for the next 4 years. And if you're seriously telling me you don't think it would be better to have Joe Biden as president than Donald Trump, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And if you're saying, well, I'm not going to vote for either one of them. Okay, well, congratulations. You've chosen your own personal moral purity over the lives and the quality of life of your fellow human beings in the United States. I hope you feel good. Super chat from Cast Iron Chaos. More serious, it looks like it's up to us, the voting public, to defeat Trump once and for all in November. The courts and the government are failing to stop him. Yeah, I mean, I did not have my heart set on the court stopping him anyway. So, I mean, nothing's really different as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, it would have been nice. It would have been nice for the courts to say, actually, he's constitutionally disqualified. He shouldn't even be on the ballot. Or actually, we're going to go ahead and make sure that his criminal trials are done before the election so everybody knows what a fucking criminal he is. You know, it would be nice. I never thought we should have counted on that, but it still would have been nice. Brandon Johanna says, Steve, love you. You're the best ever. Thank you so much. That's really sweet. And Kara says from Legends of the Dark Knight, I adore Shaman and I really love Nevermore and Hell's Bells. I don't think I've read Nevermore or Hell's Bells, but I have read Shaman. And now that you mention it, I think maybe Shaman was the first Legends of the Dark Knight story. Maybe it was Shaman, then Gothic, then Prey. Or Shaman, then Prey, then Gothic. I feel like those three were the first three storylines in Legends of the Dark Knight. And I think now that you mention, I completely forgot about Shaman. But I think Shaman might have been actually the first one, not Prey. I'll have to go back and check. Linda, yeah, I mean, I agree with that in spirit, right? Linda says if you don't vote, you have no right to complain about the consequences. I agree with that in spirit. I mean, of course, technically, you still have the right to complain. Like, you're still subject to, if you're an American, you're still subject to the laws of the government. And even if you didn't vote, you still have the right to complain about it. But, Droopy. Yes, Philip, Droopy. Thank you. That's the dog I was trying to think of. But yes, You know, if you don't vote, you should participate in the system rather than just standing outside of it and pissing and moaning about it. Yes, I agree with that. As flawed and as fucked up as the system is. And Oasis, that's exactly right. I've said that exact thing. If your right to vote wasn't important, Republicans wouldn't be trying to take it away from you. You're goddamn right. Daryl says, okay, Steve, why is it that men seen as misogynistic seem to make better music? Ike Turner, Phil Spector, Chuck Berry, etc., than men who are less so, like Barry Manilow. Well, Barry Manilow is not the only possible example. There are lots of men who do not have reputations as misogynistic that have made good music. I mean, yeah, there are a lot of really shitty guys who, were horrible to women who made good music, but there are also men who do not have those reputations who made good music. And I'm sure I'll think of one eventually. Kirak, Biden is the right choice. Yes, it does make him the right choice because he's the better choice. That's what makes him the right choice. Thanks for the super chat, by the way. Sorry, I'm yelling at you. There's going to be one of two people. How many times do I have to fucking say this? Biden sucks, but he doesn't suck anywhere close to as much as Trump. And it's either going to be Biden or Trump who are the president as a result of this election this year. Biden is the right choice because there's only two choices. Trump is the wrong choice. Biden is the right choice. This is one of those rare cases in life where it's a fucking binary decision. And as much as Biden sucks, and as much as I completely understand why people would have deep moral problems with voting for Joe Biden, especially with his enabling of what's been happening in Palestine since October, right? I completely get that. Especially if you are a Palestinian or you have people over there or you are closer to that situation than I am in terms of your family or your background or whatever. Like, I completely get it. I completely get why people would just, the thought of voting for Joe Biden. I get it. But it's going to be one of two guys. It's either going to be him or it's going to be the other guy. And if you can tell me with a straight face that you think the other guy will not be any worse than Joe Biden, like I've said before, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Isaiah with a super chat says, next time, can I share an update photo of my early 80s NASA shuttle flights? Yes, of course. Yes, of course. Oh, Geek, I know you've yelled at Kirak. I know. I don't mean to pick on Kirak. I don't mean to. You're a nice guy, but I mean, some of your opinions are very frustrating. But then again, some of Geek's opinions are frustrating to me. It's just that Geek and I seem to be more closely aligned in a lot of ways, even though I disagree with a lot of what Geek says. We're more closely aligned than a lot of what you and I seem to be, Kirak. Even though, I mean, Kirak and I are more or less aligned as well. It's just some of the shit you come out with just, makes me want to beat my head against the wall. Boxy Brown 69, didn't Barry take a dump on a woman? I can't remember if that's one of the things or not. He very well might have. I know Barry was the one where he was spying on women in the bathroom. He had like a club it turned out he had like hidden cameras in the ladies' room and he was spying on women in the bathroom. He may have taken a dump on them too. Like, I have no idea. He was accused of some pretty fucked up shit. Geek. Well, then what goes around comes around. Kirak has yelled at me as well too. Well, there you go. We're all yelling at each other. It's even. Yeah, cast iron chaos, exactly. We should have more than two choices, but again, we don't. And not only that, we should have more than two choices. And if we are stuck with two choices, the two choices should be better than the ones we have. I agree completely. But that's the way it is. Like, that's the situation. And it sucks, but that's the situation. Diego Laurenti says, hey, do you like Kevin MacLeod or Danny Elfman? For me, at least, Kevin MacLeod. Which music you use for Kevin MacLeod's videos? I do use some of Kevin's music for my videos, not as often as I used to, but I used to use Kevin's music a lot. I can't remember specifically any pieces that I used off the top of my head, but I used some Kevin MacLeod music before. Kevin's great. And Danny Elfman is fantastic. I love Danny Elfman. We just we reviewed Batman Returns on the most recent episode of the Late Seating podcast, which I will be plugging again in about 15 minutes when I end the show. Our new episode of Late Seating is our review of Batman Returns. At long last, we have reviewed Batman Returns. And one of my favorite parts of Batman Returns is Danny Elfman's score. Like, Danny Elfman's score for Batman Returns is one of my favorite movie scores. I love Danny Elfman's Batman Returns score. Kirok with a super chat says, why only two people? This is why I hate our current government. Capitalism gives you the illusion of democracy, and communism is straight out a dictatorship. I want equality for all people. How do we do this? Well, whatever we do, we don't do it between now and November is the point. I mean, again, like we can acknowledge that the current system is fucked. We can acknowledge that we need to do better, that we should, that, a national election should have more than two viable candidates, that if there are only two viable candidates, they should be of better quality than the two that we have. Those are all completely valid observations that I share, but it doesn't change the fact that November, we have a general election. One of these two people is going to be the president. Oh yes, Oasis, the show must be go. Yes, thank you. And that's in the credits. Yes, the show must be go for the outros for the Trek Actually videos. Yes, that is a Kevin MacLeod piece. Thank you, Oasis. Air One Fire, thank you very much. Says the new episode of Late Seating is awesome. Yeah, the new episode of Late Seating is we review Batman Returns, and we are joined by Jason's brother, Matt. And he joined us because we were reviewing a Batman movie, and Matt actually has a story that he wrote in the new issue of Batman the Brave and the Bold, Batman the Brave and the Bold number 10 that was just released this week. And Jason's brother Matt it's one of the backup stories in Brave and the Bold 10, and called Nameless. Nameless is the name of the story, and also the name of the main character in it. And so we wanted to promote that and to give him a chance to get the word out about that. And Jason invited him to sit in with us for Batman Returns. And yeah, it was great. It was awesome. I think it's a really good show as well. I'm glad you thought so. Hi, CMAC. CMAC says, my 2 cents, no one on our side is happy with this choice, but if we want to have a choice again, we have to vote Biden. If it's not a vote for if not, it's a vote for fascism. We need to operate in reality. Could not have said it any better myself. And of course, Dana has to quibble over minutia. It's not voting for fascism. It's just not voting to stop fascism, which is, I would argue, is functionally the same thing. But as Dana often reminds me, sometimes quite forcefully, precision matters. So far be it for me to quibble with her way of doing things. But yes, I agree with both of you. Now Diego throwing out one of his fight scenarios again. Who would win in a fight, Anthony from the Twilight Zone or Freddy Krueger? Anthony. I think Anthony would win. I don't know, though. Do Anthony's powers work in the dream world? If Anthony falls asleep and Freddy invades his dreams, could Anthony wish Freddy into the cornfield from a dream? If not, maybe I'd have to give it to Freddy. That's a tough one. Oasis, yes. Tim Burton's Batman has one of the best finale music pieces in all of cinema. And of course that's Danny Elfman as well. And yeah, it's the track, finale at the end of the movie when it ends with that great tracking shot up the side of the building, and then it dissolves to Batman standing on the precipice there with his cape flying in the wind, and the bat signal is behind him in the sky, and the music is, you know, very majestic and very cinematic, obviously. But yeah, it's a great piece, and yeah, Elfman's score for Batman as well is fantastic. But I prefer Batman Returns. His score for Batman Returns is just so good. Oh, Dana, come on, that's not fair. Fight scenario, me and Jason. Jason, look, first of all, he's an old man. He has diabetes. He has a heart condition. Like, I'd fucking kill him. I'd beat the fucking shit. I do 100 push-ups a day. I do an hour on a stationary bike or an hour of brisk walking, like every day. I'm in shape. I'm a bad motherfucker. I'm a fucking bruiser. I'm a fucking killer. I'm a fucking walking weapon, okay? I'd drop Jason like a fucking bad habit. I'd fucking kill him. I'd fucking kill him. If he ever tries anything, if he ever fucks with me, I'll fucking kill him. Actually, Oasis, Jason is fine. Jason is doing well. Thank you for asking. He's dealing with his medical issues. I mean, they're ongoing chronic conditions. You know, he's dealing with he's living with heart failure, which is something that if it's properly treated and properly medicated, you can live with. And he is living with it. He's taken his medication. He has altered his diet. He's not super happy about the dietary stuff, but he's doing good. He's doing good. And I do really appreciate you asking. Oh, Dana, I already said that earlier. Fight scenario between you and me. Well, I think you could take me. I think you could take me, Dana. I don't, yeah. Because here's the thing. I mean, you exercise too. So you're in shape too, right? I'm not the only, and you actually do like you go to the YMCA at like 5 o'clock in the morning and do CrossFit, right? I'm doing like some fucking push-ups in my living room. Okay. And that's plenty for me to take out Jason, who's got 1 foot in the grave anyway. But I mean, with you, like you're actually doing real exercise, so, and on top of that, in addition to whatever physical prowess you have on me, you're just, I mean, when you get mad, you're like a fucking wild animal. Like you just go blank. You'd fucking kill me. You tear me apart. Like if we were ever in a situation where we were fighting because you were pissed at me, like I don't think, I mean, no, you would kill me. You would literally kill me. So no, I wouldn't bet on myself in a fight with you. Air One Fire. Yeah, I do 100 push-ups. Now, here's the thing. I will say this. I don't do not 100 push-ups all in a row. I do 50 and then I do another exercise and another exercise and then I take a little break and then I do 50 more. So it's a total of 100 push-ups every morning, but not 100 all, like 1 to 100 all in a row. If I tried to do that, I probably could at this point. But it would be tough. Like the last few would be a struggle, I'm sure. But yeah, I do them in groups of 50, but yeah, a total of 100 every morning. Dana, you don't go blank. You are completely aware of the violence. Fair enough. Super chat from Kirok. If Sanders would have ran this year, he would win. Bernie supporters always say that. He couldn't even win the Democratic nomination. And I like Bernie. I love Bernie Sanders. And I agree with him politically way more than I agree with Biden. I think Bernie Sanders is terrific. But, I mean, we kind of have to face facts. Like, he ran for the Democratic nomination and he didn't win. So are we going to say, well, the guy who didn't get his party's nomination would easily win the general election? I mean, maybe. It's not guaranteed that he wouldn't. But you can't just ignore the fact that he has sought his party's nomination twice and has failed to get it. So is he necessarily the guy you want purely in terms of wanting to win the election? Ideologically, politically, yeah, I totally get it. Way better than Biden, better than Hillary in terms of what he supports and what he would try to do. Yeah. But politically, in terms of who would win the general election, I mean, if Bernie was that popular, if he was that much of a shoo-in, why didn't he win the Democratic nomination either time? Why, and this is really difficult for like especially hardcore Bernie supporters to accept, why didn't he even get close either time? Because he was never really close to beating Hillary Clinton. Like he hung in there and he made it a race, right? But there was never really any realistic shot he was going to win. And there was never really any realistic shot. Once Biden actually caught fire and pulled ahead in 2020, Bernie was never going to catch him. It was never even close. So again, nothing against Bernie as a person or as you know, the policies that he supports. I'm totally on board. I love Bernie, but purely just as an acknowledgement of political realism. You can't just say, well, if Bernie would have ran, he would have won. Really? He ran twice before and he didn't even get the nomination. So, hey, Stephen G. Clenard. CMAC, 100 push-ups over the course of a month. Hey, you know what? There you go. And Cast Iron Chaos, like I mean, I voted for Bernie in my primary in 2016. I mean, I think he should have got the nomination too. And of course I would have voted for him in the general, but he didn't get the nomination. And people saying the establishment was against him. I mean, sure, the establishment was against him, but he lost to Hillary in the popular votes. Like people who say like, well, the party was against him. I'm completely willing to accept that, but it's not like some Bernie supporters go so far as to say they rigged it against him. And that's horseshit. He lost popular elections over and over and over again in the primary process. I'm not saying I don't wish it had been different. I'm not saying I don't wish Bernie had been the nominee instead of Hillary or even instead of Biden. Because like I said, I like Bernie a lot. But you can't just write off the fact that the voters in Democratic primary elections overwhelmingly chose other people both times he ran. Like, yeah, okay, the party didn't want him. The party preferred Hillary. The party preferred Biden. I'm not arguing that. But unless you're willing to say that the party rigged all of the primary elections that Bernie Sanders lost to the eventual nominees in 2016 and 2020, I mean, I don't know how you can get around that. He lost the elections. Yeah, Cast Iron Chaos, exactly. Like, yeah, the Democrats didn't give the nomination to Hillary. Like, she won enough delegates to get it. And like, again, it wasn't really that close. It wasn't that close, and it wasn't close with Biden either. So, arguments of, well, the establishment was against him, like those only go so far. The establishment preferred Hillary to Obama in 2008 as well, if you remember, and Obama still was able to beat her because he won more primary elections and he won more delegates than she got. I mean, I think Obama versus Hillary was a much more competitive primary than either Bernie versus Hillary or Bernie versus Biden. It was way more of a horse race between Obama and Hillary in 2008. And I think you could safely say that at the beginning of that process, the Democratic establishment was much more in favor of Hillary being the nominee than Barack Obama. But Obama eventually won because he won because he won. Because he won more primary states, he won more delegates. You know? So, yeah, the argument of, well, Bernie would have gotten the nomination if not for the establishment being against him. I don't think that's enough. Like, that's not enough to account for the fact that he lost resoundingly to Hillary and to Biden. I think you can say that that's maybe an indictment of the electorate, maybe. You can say like the Democratic Party as an institution and as a voting bloc should have been more progressive and more adventurous, maybe, in choosing its nominee, and should have gone with Bernie instead of Hillary or Bernie instead of Biden. Again, completely sympathetic to that. But you can't just say, well, they were against Bernie, he would have won. It's not, I would love to say that was true, but I don't think that's true. All right. It is, yeah, Geek is putting the links. Geek is putting the links in the chat, and I'm going to start wrapping up the show. So I want to remind everybody, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, in addition to the YouTube stuff that I do, I also co-host some podcasts, one of which is the Late Seating Podcast, which is Stephen G. Clinton. Bernie would have won if more voters voted for him than his opponent. Exactly. Anyway, I co-host a couple of podcasts along with the great Jason Harding, who I would never get in a fight with and who I love dearly like he was my own brother. And if you heard somebody earlier make fun of him for being sick or weak or saying he had one foot in the grave, that was not me at all. And I don't know who said those things. But I'm a co-host on the Late Seating Podcast, which is the movie review podcast, where we take a look at classic films and see if they deserve their reputation, whether it's good or bad. And as I mentioned already, our new episode is up right now, and it is our review of Batman Returns, guest starring Jason's brother, Matt, who is now an official Batman comic writer. And we talk about his Batman story that is published in Batman the Brave and the Bold number 10, which just hit newsstands this week, I believe. And we talk about Batman Returns, and it was a really good show. It was a lot of fun. And also, in addition to Late Seating, myself and also the wonderful, fantastic Dana Cole, who does not suck at all, no matter what she says about herself, alongside Jason, are part of the Ensign's Log podcast, which is a Star Trek themed improv comedy podcast where we play characters that are currently serving aboard. Until recently, we were serving aboard the TNG Enterprise, but some of us have just relocated to another Star Trek location. And we're entering a new phase of the show now. But yeah, you can listen to the latest episode of the Ensign's Log and the latest episode of Late Seating at the link on your screen. And also they are linked in the video description as well. And of course, if you like this work that I do here on YouTube, you can be a supporter of this channel by going to patreon.com/Steve Shives, or by clicking the join button to become a channel member. Members and patrons at all levels get to submit questions ahead of time for these Ask Away live streams. So I will answer those questions in the first part of the show. That's just one of the little perks that you can take advantage of if you become a patron or a member at any level. If you enjoy my work and you can afford to toss $1 a month my way, or $5 or $10, or however much you can afford, and however much you think I'm worth. And I really, really appreciate all my patrons and all my members and all my supporters in any way. And yes, Geek, thank you for the reminder. Don't forget, please, charitylinks.page. That is linked in the video description. That's the address, charitylinks.page. That will take you to a Google Doc that is curated by our friend Some Random Geek, where you will find links to fundraisers and PayPal links and begging bowls, etc., for some friends of ours who need some financial assistance, who are in a rough time in terms of having enough money to pay the bills and put food on the table. And if you have a few spare bucks left over at the end of the month and you want to put them toward a good cause, I would highly recommend making use of the links that Geek has already put in the live chat, or just going to charitylinks.page, where you'll find those links and more that will lead you to people who could use your help. So please consider doing that. All right, that's it, everybody. Thank you all so much for being with me for another Ask Away. I'll be back in 2 more weeks to do this again. Don't forget, Dana and I are streaming live on this channel on Wednesdays starting at 6 p.m. Eastern for Trek Reluctantly. This week, we're back to watching Deep Space Nine, and the episode we're watching is Nor the Battle to the Strong. And I will see you in addition to that with all the regular, proper, pre-recorded, written, edited videos that I have coming out that I'll be shooting, some of which tomorrow. And yeah, thanks so much for joining me. Have a good night. Have a good weekend. And I'll see you next time, everybody. Bye-bye.